Hello everybody, Dr. Phil here. This is a video where I'll be discussing product development as part of marketing. So the first thing we'll talk about is what is a new product. So there's various categories of new products. Like you probably just think of new product as it's just first time it came out. Well, not necessarily because sometimes if a product is like revamped, they go back and spend some R&D and redo it. That can also be considered a new product. Well, the first one, the obvious one, is new to the market products, right? That is actually the smallest percentage of new products. A lot of people would think it's the largest. It's actually the smallest. Um, but obviously, it needs strong research and development. You need to make sure the product is, technically robust, and obviously, presumably, you've done the marketing, the research beforehand to make sure that there's a demand for what you're putting out into the marketplace. An example would be disruptive technologies, smartphone versus cell phone. Obviously, back in the day, everybody had a cell phone, and very few people had smartphones, and of course, they caught on, like wildfire. They caught on very quickly, very rapidly, and now it's very few people. They even now call the old phones like dumb phones because it's like the old kind of flip phones. Although also there's actually I'm reading there's actually a movement, a lot of people just to sort of declutter and de-stress, moving back to those old phones, so they're not so distracted by these devices. So service innovation, there could be new types of services, maybe a change to the way a service is processed or delivered. So yeah, don't just think about it in terms of goods, although that's a lot of it, probably the majority of it, but you also think about it in terms of services. So new product development, sometimes we'll abbreviate this NPD, is really consisting of 7 stages. So it consists of 7 stages. So the first one is new product strategy development. Looking at um, is there a need? I mean, obviously you got to satisfy some kind of need, or you've got to create a want. Otherwise, the product is going to go nowhere. So generating ideas, screening ideas, the business analysis more on the, how would we, maybe we came up with an idea or ideas, we've kind of narrowed them down, we've refined them. How would we pay for that? What kind of costing would be involved with that? Product development, maybe some beta testing, maybe testing it on a particular market. Um, and then test marketing, and then of course the product launch. So stage one, new product strategy development. So this determines the direction the company will take. So it may rely on SWOT analysis or environmental scanning. Same strategy typically for development methods should be used for both goods and services because yeah, it's one's goods, one's services, but the strategy itself doesn't, remains unchanged. It isn't any different. And we want to analyze the risks and the benefits, sort of the risk and reward, if you will. Stage two is the idea generation. So could be as simple as post-it notes, could be design thinking, could be brainstorming. If you want to go external, crowdsourcing, maybe outsourcing the idea to a consulting company. Also open innovation. The idea screening phase, where this is where the ideas are accepted or rejected. A lot of them will obviously be rejected for various reasons. Too complicated. There's no demand for that. There's no need for it. It's too expensive. We can't build it for that cheap, so on and so forth. There's somebody out there already doing it, and it would be hard to, supplant them. So, this is the idea of this sort of idea screening questions, and then of course a concept test. Now, the role of social media is on the rise. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody. So it's good because it means there's easier ways to find out information about people, get data, um, and it's also a cheaper way to spread, new product launches. There's often a lot of build up, a lot of hype, before a product is launched. So, the NPD process, not probably not at the very beginning, but towards the point where they're like, okay, we beta tested something, it's good. We may want to sort of build a bit of hype, generate a bit of a stir, or a frenzy on social media. Um, you know, Kind of launch this thing, get people thinking about it, and then hopefully when it launches, there'll be a big early demand for it. Stage four is excuse me, business analysis. So here we'd be looking at things like profitability calculations. Okay, what's the likely revenue? What's the likely revenue we'll generate? What are the expenses? Thus, what would be the net income generated? Is it helping or hurting our bottom line? With the caveat that we may not make money straight away. It's possible that we may lose all money straight away because it takes time to, sometimes reputationally to build. But we understand that if we've got other products, we could almost sort of use the profits on those to kind of subsidize a new product entry if we have to, at least in the short run. Estimating costs, we could achieve economies of scale. We could offshore. identifying at what price the product will likely be sold. And, where you're selling it is, of course, going to really be a big determinant of that. If you're selling something in the sort of developed countries, the Western world, then you can probably command a certain price for it. If you're selling it in developing countries where incomes are very much lower, or typically lower, then you have to rethink that price. And then of course estimating demand for the product, and that's we may use complicated techniques like regression analysis. We may just look at demand for competitors' products that are already maybe doing similar things. If no one out there is doing it, then obviously that's a little more challenging. Stage five is product development. So things like packaging. Obviously, the packaging is important because that's the first thing people see. So you kind of want to build up that visual appeal, bit of a, start building that brand, product equity, if you will. So we may do prototypes, services, equipment, staffing. These are all examples of service prototypes that you could use. Um, Unfortunately, the stage five as it says, is long and costly. I mean, a good example would be drug companies and pharma. Think about how much money the companies spend, you know, bringing a typical drug to the stage of what's called like technological feasibility, to the point where it's ready to be launched. It's past the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. And now it's ready to be, ready to be sold, put on the shelves and sold. But the company's probably already got billions and billions of dollars over the last like maybe 10 or 20 years that they're now, are going to try to recoup. That, of course, is why we have things like patents. Stage six is test marketing. So we may introduce to and I kind of alluded to this before, made reference to this previously. We may want to introduce to a geographically limited market. So maybe just one area of the country, maybe just a different country. So we're testing the marketing strategy as well as the product. Now, with this comes some risks, right? It's expensive and time consuming. It of course reveals the product to the competition, so they're immediately going to go out and buy it, reverse engineer it, figure out how it's made. And of course, it allows possible imitation from competitors. The level of imitation again would depend on like if it was patented or not, then you're going to have more, sort of legal protection there if you did. Um, Economical options. You may want to simulate a test market. And then there's also the possibility for online test marketing. It's going to be somewhat cheaper, but it's still going to be expensive. Again, this is a phase that's, this is kind of where the rabbit's now out the hat, if you will, right? So people see it again, including your competitors, presuming you have them. Um, and that's where you've really got to have done the marketing right, because what you don't need is you launch the product, they buy yours, somebody else launches one much cheaper because they didn't have all the R&D costs that you did, and then immediately everybody just goes and switches to theirs. That wouldn't be good. And then stage seven is product launch. So this is where we're going to do things like purchase materials. We're going to have to hire employees. We've got to manufacture enough to fill a distribution pipeline. So again, think about that supply chain. Strategically place goods in warehouses, depending on where we anticipate, if there's higher demand in, say, the East Coast, then we're going to need more on the East Coast warehouses, maybe less in the West Coast if we anticipate, less demand out there, so on and so forth. Preparing systems, training employees, and then, of course, there's going to be the time to market. So categorizing risks in new product developments. So the highest level occurs when products fail to generate sales or prove to be dangerous, defective, or deceptive. This, of course, as you can imagine, can permanently damage the firm's image, or I should say, and/or create legal liabilities. So that would be kind of disastrous to get some real bad press, right when you launch it. Somebody gets hurt, seriously injured, so on and so forth. That's going to really kind of put people off buying whatever it is you just launched. Um, there's also a significant risk when introducing internationally. So one example would be Nokia's launch of its it didn't go well at all. Its Lumia smartphone. So again, did they really do their marketing homework? And some would say yes, some would say no. Could they have done that probably a little differently? Maybe be more successful, possibly so. I mean, of course, this is kind of Monday morning quarterbacking here, but yeah, I think it's possible that had their strategy been a little different, they may have actually been able to do something and do something better with that. All right, the product life cycle. So the product life cycle has 5 stages. So one is NPD, new product developments, which comes from new ideas. Two is the introduction stage, and that has few or no competitors with slow increase of sales. Three is the growth stage, where sales, profits, and competition increase. Four is the maturity stage, where sales level off and competition becomes fierce. And then five is sort of the decline stage when sales and profits decrease and competition begins to drop out. So estimating the length of a product's life. This is an interesting question because it can be very hard to do this. So of course it varies in length depending on the type of product or you could say type of service. So we think of the product mix as all of the products that a firm sells. We think about width as like a great example is GM, General Motors. Think about all the, as it says, offers a variety of GM offers a variety of categories and brands. Think about all the different brands that they offer, like GM, you know, GMC, Chevrolet, Buick, Saturn back in the day, used to own Hummer, so on and so forth. And then product depth, like Chevy has 8 different models. Most of them are going to probably have around that range. Um, and then product mix consistency. So again, you heard me talk about like Buick, GMC. Back in the day, there was Saturn. Back in the day when I was a student, they were very popular cars because they were cheap and they would pretty much run forever as long as you maintain them, obviously. And then companies offering services also have a product mix. So, good example, Bank of America has checking and savings accounts. They also have credit cards, student banking, and of course, online and mobile banking. So, Bank of America is kind of an example of companies that offer services, but they also offer products as well. So projecting the shape of the PLC, the product lifecycle curve. So there are different types. How this would look is really different for every product, obviously. Um, some products are what we would consider high learning. So things like personal computers, it takes time to learn it, a little more technical. Low learning products, a good example would be laundry detergent, right? I mean, what do you really need to do other than read how much to put in and dump it into the machine? We have fad products, like if you remember those little fidget spinners, they're all the craze, and then, next thing you know, nobody talks about them anymore. And then fashion products, an example could be men's hats. And yeah, it's worth noting too that some companies purposefully utilize short lifespans. A good example of that would, of course, be the world of fashion. All right, thanks for watching. Kept this one short this week, and I will see you all in a future video. Take care.